That this morning they're going to be cutting flights. Was it 10% or 40%? But it was a big number. Do you know what the number was?
It was 10% across with several different airports.
So they're going to be cutting the number of flights, and they were doing comparisons to past shutdowns, which were actually partial shutdowns. And so how grave of a story this really could become very quickly. And so they think that may push lawmakers to get this thing through.
Yeah, it's going to be a very big pressure point.
We don't know how the market might react. Will there be a knee-jerk reaction, at least to the upside, or will it come up off the lows if we get that news? There might be a sense of relief with that, to have some clarity versus uncertainty. The market doesn't like uncertainty, but nobody knows how the market will react. When it comes to tech, and I do want to get to the Challenger labor numbers, because the layoffs have been huge. Layoffs surged the 20-year highs. So while we're not getting some of the data, we've been getting some soft data from ADP and such. But just on the tech story, NVIDIA, Palantir, AMD, three big movers this week, and Qualcomm out with its numbers. I mean, just one more final thought here on tech.
Yeah, so if we're looking at Qualcomm, so it's getting a little bit heavy there. And then the OpenAI news yesterday, I think, has gone under the radar here, but their CFO kind of talking about the federal government providing a backstop for them in order for them to expand their data center investments and be able to create cheaper rates. I don't think that the market probably did not like that. I think that's another reason why NVIDIA kind of dropped to the downside here, but you're really kind of talking about a backstop for OpenAI.
And Tesla Investor Day. So we'll have Tesla to keep an eye there, folks. As far as what happened with Palantir, I mean, Alex Karp saying basically he really gave his rebuttal. That's a nice way to say it, to Solomon and Pick, right? Happening this week, right? Because we saw NVIDIA, Palantir, AMD, Qualcomm, who came out with some numbers. So you're okay with a little bit of a pullback, even 10% or more? I mean, that's part of the climb.
We'd even say it's overdue. You've got some headwinds.
And Ted Pick, when they were sort of putting out a cautionary tone and actually named Palantir at one point, he seemed much more positive.
That was entertaining to watch. I mean, Alex Karp.
China will win it because, they've had obviously the limitations on what NVIDIA chips going to China. I think he sort of dialed it back. I heard, I didn't confirm all this, but that he dialed it back when he put something on social media. But his concern is China wins the AI race. What do you think about NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, what's going on in the AI arms race?
Well, there's no question that the spending in the AI...
What about that?
Well, Cole, valuations outside the U.S. are about half, right? PE ratios are 15 versus 20.
The idea here is to take advantage of the dips, and tech still is the leader. Is that the driver? Is the catalyst some of the circular spending? I mean, there was some concern about OpenAI looking to the government for some backing, but we've seen a lot of the circular funding happening. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, billions and billions and billions going around in a circle. It's not like the old days where venture capitalists would give money and say, I expect return on my investment. This is, I'll give you X billion and it seems so theoretical. I don't know.
It is not the healthiest.
James, do you look at some of the other sectors? Are they very interesting to you in addition to technology?
Yeah, we are big fans of financials.
James Demmer, great to see you. Always love having you on. Founder and Chief Investment Officer, Main Street Reese. People have an over-concentration in technology, particularly because that runs up so fast. And now your portfolio may have too much technology in it because of the great gains that you've gotten. When you talk about some of the other sectors, you mentioned real estate. Tell me about that. I mean, some of these other sectors that may be a good way to protect on the downside and it's important to be diversified, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, particularly
direct indexing and explaining to folks some of those strategies because, it comes on like a lot. And, direct indexing, for example, was something that was for a higher wealth part, and now more people are doing this, and people are always chasing yield, and they're always looking for tax efficient ways to invest, right? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, certainly direct indexing because it allows
different than what we were used to prior. And you're seeing that circular funding and the billions from me to you to this one to that one, and even OpenAI looking to the government but they're out, offering billions to make deals. So it does leave questions for folks, but the AI boom and the AI excitement and the growth that we've been seeing in the AI names, the Mag 7, and the trickling out to some of those others still seems to be on board. And while some of the folks I speak with talk about pullbacks, they still say buy the dips. So you mentioned derivative income strategies. Tell me a little more about that part of it.
Yeah, so it's definitely
days where they talk about options volume and it was a record day, and we have those from time to time. And not that long ago, there was a Friday a few weeks ago that we had such heavy options volume trading. What does that tell you, either pro or con? Because it gives you a glimpse into how people are positioning too, right?
So it tells you.
Co-founded this together, and I'll give you the final word here, because we also, people like to have a strategy for investing. They think it's a good economy, a bad economy, when the markets are going higher or lower. A final thought.
Yeah, again, ultimately, you got to figure out what the goals you're trying.
Tech has been so exciting. We've been seeing that boom, but there's always, is there an AI bubble? Market breadth has not been particularly great in the last few weeks. So what are people asking you, and what do you tell them for 2026?
Yeah, no, that's a great.
More diversification into alternative investing, private investing, and that's something you've been talking about as well.
Yeah, so look, private.
Actually, Charles Schwab buying Forge Global, $660 million deal. That'll give folks, it sort of gives people who didn't normally have access to private companies. A lot of companies are staying private longer, not necessarily going for an IPO. Gives them that way to get in there and celebrate the wealth and the growth that sometimes we see. Something you were focusing on, Brian, very interesting, is the CapEx spending. You talked about industrials, mid-caps, small caps. Tell me a little bit more about some ideas for 2026.
Yeah, for sure. The July 4th tax.
They want to diversify away from their own markets. How have foreign markets been, and why does the U.S. provide that balance that they need?
It's interesting. The majority of investors outside the U.S. often aren't investors.
Trading, the 5 days a week trading helped.
Yeah. So, what's interesting, obviously Schwab launched 24 by 5
have that opportunity. There was concern that people were not interested in the U.S. for a while. I'm sure you heard that from some folks. Did that prove to be fast passing, unmerited? Because they were worried about if they're selling treasuries or the U.S. dollar. What were your thoughts on that after speaking to a lot of folks?
I think we saw a little bit of a slowdown.
Do they ask about the rules? Because each country has its rules. We have our rules here. I'm sure there's no blanket answer to that.
So, if they're a client of Charles,
you get a slew of questions about Mag 7 and crypto. And look, now with the deal today with Forge Global, we'll have access to private companies. What are some of the themes that people are asking? Gold was hot. What are some of the people looking for now in the next 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, I think across the board they have the same concerns that are domestic.
It's been something that people love, but we're seeing more and more folks going to different sectors. Market breadth hasn't been particularly great, but looking for ones when we look at interest rates coming down, or real estate, for example, right, or utilities. Do you find people are diversifying?
Absolutely, and one of the great things, as you know, at Schwab, we
talking earlier with Rick Worcester, and we were saying how it was record profits and record trading levels and record new accounts. And so, it continues to grow, and this international footprint that Charles Schwab has still growing.
Absolutely. In fact, we have seen our contribution